And welcome to uh, the Cybersecurity Pathway and the 712 CTE. Now, this is Module D, and this is activity we'll be dealing with inclusive and adaptive teaching. So what is the first question we want to ask is what is culturally responsive teaching? Well, culture responsive sustaining computer science or cybersecurity pedagogy includes the teacher's instructional practice, the curriculum resources, and the activities used in the classroom, as well as the instructional design practices utilized by the teacher. Culture responsive sustaining computer science pedagogy and cybersecurity pedagogy is necessary but not sufficient to achieve equity in computer science. It must be implemented alongside broader solutions to dismantle, the inequality in education, employment, health, and the environment, all of which disproportionately negatively impact marginalized communities. So another question we want to ask when we're looking at trying to be inclusive in our classroom is what does belonging look like? Well, and take a few seconds, you can stop, just think about that. What does belonging look like? Okay, and you might have an idea of that. That's fine. Now, let's belonging is a feeling of safety and support for a member of a certain group where there is complete sense of acceptance, inclusion, and identity affirmation. Now, belonging, like it says here, is centered on gaining acceptance and attention and support from members of the group, as well as providing the same attention to other members. Now, belonging is an emotional, as we know, need to be accepted. We all need that and connected with the members of the group. So, another question we ask when we're looking at inclusion in our classroom is what is identity? And take a second or two to think about that. What is identity? Well, identity is the collective set of characteristics which a person is known by or can be grouped by. Identity characteristics can be both visible and invisible. We have hidden identity items that make up us that people don't see. Some identity characteristics can change or shift over time. Identity provides some belonging to the large and small groups of other people. Okay. So I, while we're doing this, I want us to do, and you can do this as your own. You can stop the video as you want. This is an activity you can do with your class, or you can do with teachers in your school. But we're going to do a little identity activity. And this is from the social cultural identity wheel, if you want to look this up. And I have it in the resources that will be on the course if you want to look through these. But, you know, for this activity, we're going to get focusing on ourselves. We're going to look at ourselves, okay? I want you to visualize that each of us carry around and everywhere we go this backpack. And take a moment to think about what this looks like to everyone you encounter. You're carrying around their own backpack as well. So you can see their backpack, but not what's in it. Now, this backpack contains all the unique components that make every one of us unique. Some of the items are very special to us. Some might weigh us down at times, and some we forget are even in our backpack. Now, start to visualize what's in your backpack. I want you to just take a moment to think about that. Okay. Yeah. All right. Now, now you can get this. I have this in the resources, but right now you could scan this and do this as we're working through this, or you could take time to do this. This is a copy of this inventory here about the proverbial backpack. All right. So just take time, and I'll give you time to get this item if you want to do it, and and start considering what makes you unique, and complete the backpacks of identity. So take a few minutes, stop it here, and then come back. So I ask you, What identities, after you fill this out, what identities have the strongest effect on how you see yourself? All right. With which identities have you experienced privilege or vulnerability? So think about those two things. Maybe circle the one and put a check in the others or whatever. What identities have the strongest effect on how you see yourself? And which ones do you think out of those that have experienced privilege or vulnerability with those? Okay, and you can stop this and come back. All right. Now I want you to look at, all right, think about our identities are how we perceive the identities of others aren't just words on paper. They play a part in how we behave, whether or not we mean it or not, or whether we realize it or not. In the example, the culture with family, but let's think about the opposite situation now. Uh, you know, we're going to pause here to take a few moments to think about a time you felt very different from people around you. When you're ready, press play and we'll continue together. So think about a time in which felt very different from other people. What happened? How did you feel? How did it impact your choices in life later? So I'll give you time to do that. Just and take time to think about that. All right, let's just jumpstart our memories. Here's a look at back at some things that we pretty much all understand. But treating people differently isn't always a bad thing. It's not fair to treat people equally. Like example, colorblind. We don't want to treat that person like everyone else. We have to take that into context. There are contexts, like I'm just saying, situations where differences should be considered. Differences aren't negative or have consequence. They're just the reality. Windows and mirrors. For example, if I have an EL student in my classroom, I identify and need to honor their identity and culture, it's doing so. I may recognize challenges or barriers in the learning environment or situation. We're not assigning blame to any identity or culture. The student as a whole and their identities and cultures aren't the problem. Issues are in the learning environment. So we want to think about their identity, think about their culture, and think about, the diversity, the differences among individuals in that classroom based on which then they may be treated differently. And this is where we come in with intersectionality. It's a very, the focus on just one identity, like we've already talked about, none of us are just one thing. Okay. We need to consider how someone's experiences are shaped, not just by each of their identities, but also the combination of identities. Unfortunately, some people face even more negative biases because of the specific combinations of their identities. This is explored in the concept of intersectionality. For example, we know that students are much more likely to sign up for a cybersecurity class or CS class if we focus mainly on the male versus female enrollment. We're ignoring the data about male students who are English learners, a group of students from whom we sometimes struggle with getting them to engage in computer science, cybersecurity. Another example that extends beyond CS classroom students of color with disabilities are much more likely to face more disciplinary consequences than their peers. Okay, so first, let's take a look at your backpack contents and consider which identities have the strongest effect on how you see yourself. These effects could be positive, negative, or even neutral. Maybe you're very strongly connected to your ethnicity as a point of pride. That's a positive. Maybe you struggle with your body image. That's a negative. Maybe you don't see your gender as being good or bad, but it's definitely a big part of how you see yourself. And that's neutral. Please make a note of the identities by hiding the category on your page. So, what identities have the strongest effect on how you see yourself? So maybe you some way mark them up, and I'll give you some time to do that. You can stop it here until we get to the next slide. So now think about what identities have you experienced privilege or vulnerability? All right. You can stop here and then we're going. So so our next question. If you were to eliminate two of your identities, which would you choose? When we say eliminate, we mean to make them no longer relevant or observable by others. Don't skip this question. This can be hard. This is even, this is even if they're all really important to you, try to choose two that that you would eliminate. Take a few seconds for that and we'll come back. Going in the opposite direction of the previous question, now consider identities that would be non-negotiable. You would not, these identities are the most important to you. So take a minute or two to do that. We just have two more questions to consider before we wrap up here for a second. All right. Consider the students in your classrooms. Okay, let's just consider them. Do you think your students ever feel weighed down or insecure with their proverbial backpack? How might they feel about the identities if they did this activity? Consider how students' experiences at school may make them feel like they're forced to disregard or eliminate their identities. You might be excited or nervous to get started with your cybersecurity, um, class, and feelings of kind of focus on you rather than who else is involved in this. Your students are the ones that should be considered as you develop your cybersecurity program. And we hope that you think back to this activity and make an effort to consider your students' identities in your classrooms and in your cybersecurity classrooms specifically. Recognizing and understanding your own culture identity is an important first step in shifting your teaching practices. Knowing what yourself will allow you to teach with empathy. If you are able to consider your own cultural background, you can truly emphasize with your students culturally and linguistically responsive teaching and learning. Okay, so let's talk about a little bit about windows and mirrors. CR isn't cultural responsive. CR isn't just for the students with identities that differ from the majority. It's for all students. We bring our own identities in the classroom. We must embrace that while also helping all students see into the mirrors and then open up windows so they can appreciate how they are part of the bigger picture. They are critical for the change, and that together we can make this world a better, more inclusive place. So this statement here is good. When classrooms serve as both windows and mirrors, they become inclusive across identity domains. See, this allows students with diverse experience identities to feel both validated by being included and to have an opportunity to humanize others whose background may differ from them, which enhances climate, allowing learners to feel seen and represented. And that's what we want in our cybersecurity classrooms for sure. So what is the framework we should follow for culturally responsive teaching? Well, it's critical for educators to optimize student voice and choice through UDL, or Universal Design for Learning, so that curriculum and instruction can be culturally responsive. CRT, Culturally Responsive Teaching, brings together UDL, funds of knowledge, and importance of student identity. So when we talk about UDL, this is a quick review. The big idea, or we go back to the root, is in architecture. There's one way to sum up UDL. Whether in educational environment or architecture anywhere else, it's necessary for some, but good for all. Here's a couple examples that we have here. One of the biggest examples is curb cut ramps. Curb cut ramps were created specifically for individuals with disabilities who use wheelchairs, but other people benefit from that, including people walking with strollers or luggage and people walking with canes and crutches. All right. The same idea goes for automatic doors. A few other, examples that have become more, you know, in recent years include height adjustable furniture and speech to text software on our smartphones. There are a lot of examples we can see in daily life. Closed caption serves people with hearing impairment, but it can also benefit other people, someone like me, or you know, that might have hearing problems, or lifelong English language learners that need that help with the English. These are all examples of things that are necessary for some, but prove to be beneficial for all. It turns out if we design for those on the margins, those with very specific needs, we end up creating things that work for everybody. And that's our goal. So that's all the concept behind universal design. When we look at the word universal, well, what does universal mean? We know that one size doesn't fit all. If something is universal design, it should be flexible to accommodate the diversity of its users. The design is flexible and may increase accessibility. And it is designed from the beginning. It isn't an afterthought. Start from the start, and we don't need to go back and fix it. This is why I'm bringing this up in this pathway. So you think of this as you designing your pathway or designing your cybersecurity curriculum. You want to be proactive. So UDL is a framework, not a checklist. UDL applies neuroscience to provide a framework to guide educators in designing learning environments and experiences that meet the need of, variable learners. So we know UDL is supported by research on how networks of the brain engage in specific aspects of learning. Research tells us that everyone learns differently. Learning uses three brain networks: affective, recognition, and strategic. But the way each person's brain uses these networks to process the information is unique. As educators, we could support the diverse way students learn by designing instruction to engage all three brain networks. So, we're going to look into the basics of what the framework looks like, and this is in your resources. And we did go over this a little bit in our module A, as we were introducing the whole pathway. The UDL framework was developed by CAS, and so UDL has three major principles. The top row, three are the big principles. These three principles of UDL are based on the brain research and cognition of learning. Each brain network has a corresponding UDL principle to support it. So provide multiple means of how do we, whoops, let's go back. So we have how do we utilize different ways to motivate students and stimulate interest? How do we provide information in more than one format, which allows students to acquire a variety of ways, assess and engaging content? And how do we differentiate ways for students to show that they know, demonstrating learning? So each of the principles networks has three sets of guidelines, three verbs: access, build, and internalize, that correspond to three stages of our instruction. If you are familiar with that, the terms I do, we do, you do, that this is what we're trying to do. So we have I do. First guideline, access, which we can say goes with I do. I do stage involves ask questions to warm up, motivate them. We may present information or do some demonstration or modeling. Could we provide options for recruiting interest, options for perception, and options for physical actions? So, all right. And then we have the build, which corresponds to the stage we do. So we do stage, teachers and students, or students and students work together to build, construct the knowledge of skills. And then we have the internalize, which corresponds to the third stage, you do. Last stage, you internalize it. We want our students to work independently and internalize their learning. So each of these principal networks has three sets of guidelines so that there are a total of 9 different guidelines. Ultimately, it's important for learners to become the expert of their own learning. Here are the goals under each principles. Expert learners who are purposeful and motivated, resourceful and knowledgeable, strategic and goal directed. As you look over the framework, I want you to point out a few things that it is not. Notice that it is not a list of instructions or a checklist. It's not about how to add more technology in your classroom. It's about designing learning. And it's not just about students with disabilities or IEPs, it's about all students. So, but what about differentiation? Isn't that important? That's a question you might ask. And that's very important in cybersecurity education as well. But many of us are trained and familiar with differentiation instruction, but that isn't enough. DI, of course, is important and has its own place. The difference between UDL and DI is, you think of is very different. So we're going to take a look at a taco bar metaphor a step further. So when we looked at this slide, you know, UDL is more proactive, predicts and plans around potential barriers and user focus, like a buffet with many choices. Whereas, differentiation instruction is reactive, notices barriers, teacher focused. So now we're going to use the taco bar to help us understand this. Instead of box lunches with sandwiches that might require someone with special dietary needs to pick things off or go without, a taco bar allows people with a variety of needs and interests to have a delicious lunch. But how do you decide what's available in the taco bar? You can't possibly offer every possible ingredient. That's just not impossible. Choosing ingredients is easier the more you know about your guest. If you know that someone has celiac disease, I'll be sure to include gluten-free options. If you know that two of my friends don't like cilantro, I might still include it, but would make sure they don't have to get it. In the education setting, the more I know about my students, the more thoughtful I can be about creating and designing activities to meet the needs and diversity. So how can we do that? Going back to the culturally responsive teaching, culturally responsive teaching and pedagogy is a pedagogy that recognizes the importance of including students. CR is about taking considerations, leveraging students' identity, culture to create a positive experience. Let's take that a step back and think about our students. You know that each learner is complex. No learner is just one thing. Everyone is different. We know that. Learners are highly variable, and variability is contextual. The more I know about my students, the more thoughtful I can be in designing activities to meet their needs. Knowing our students, CRT helps us identifying starting points, their priorities, and designing equitable learning and leveraging the elements of identity and culture and anticipating needs and challenges. With UDL, the framework helps us ensure that design learning environments and activities support all learners proactively, providing multiple means of engagement, representation, and action expression. So here we have a chart that I have in the resources that we adapted from the University of Illinois. And we made it for CS, but I also think it ties into our cybersecurity education. We took this universal design and we have broken it up and given ideas and strategies, CS strategies and virtual considerations, because we built this during the virtual time, and how to hit each one of these different levels. And this is a resource you can use in your classrooms. And this is in the resources in the course as well. So teachers believe that UDL is important, but do not know where to start or how to find a time to plan and matter. It looks really time consuming as you think about it. When you think about your cybersecurity classroom, start small. All right. I had no idea what could UDL look like in my cybersecurity class, explore, the strategies in the sheet, in that sheet I just shared with you. But here's some steps. What is the learning environment? What are the learning goals? What are their students' identities, cultures, backgrounds? And what are the cultural CR and UDL priorities? How can you leverage those? And what unique needs and challenges should I consider? Now, I have this in your resources too, that these questions on a document that you can use to ask as you work through it. So here's some strategies to use in your cybersecurity classroom to help be more inclusive. And these are things that I have shared and I have used and I'm sharing with them and then they are in the resources, but I want to talk to them a little bit. All right. The goal of using activities like the origin, of your name, like if you ask kids about their name and, if they know anything about their name, that's a great activity. All right. Code, another thing is, allow students to co-design. Co-design at the beginning of the year. Share with your students the units of study you will be covering. Let them see an outline of the units of study and sign up for one that they want to help design. Not only does it get students assessing their funds of knowledge, but it also helps optimize relevance, value, and authenticity. They can help connect to community partners they may know or their culture and select resources they find relevant. Also shows that they are an integral part of the learning environment. Great way to do some cybersecurity activities. Writing to express themselves. So it is our job to design opportunities for students to become expert learners, those who are purposeful and motivated. We must also guide students to effectively communicate what they have learned, how they feel, and their goals for the future. We can do this by celebrating their voices of the learners through written and spoken language. So here's an activity I did with writing. Now, this is a paper format, but I put this in digital format. And I have the whole thing. I had each day, I had question starters to help those with, language barriers. But each day, this is their ticket out the door. Think about today's assignment activity. Rate one summary sentence. What you completed or learned using a summarizing sentence. Now, they could take one of these summarizing starters, put it in there, and just finish it and fit it in. So that's why I made it very simple for them. And then they also had to do each day a different sentence too, a connecting sentence on this day and a questioning sentence. So they could take the starters, just finish it, and then eventually they can do it on their own. And day two, they're always doing a summarizing, but day two, I threw in inferring and evaluating. And then day three would be throwing in different sentences. So they're always expressing themselves every day. But you're from the beginning taking care of the barriers with these type of sentences and giving them starters to help them. So this is a good way. And I have this activity in the resources. So, in other ways you can do this, involve students, families, monthly newsletters about your cybersecurity class, cybersecurity night for parents, and continue to evaluate your curriculum for UDL and CR in action. I have a teacher equity content rubric that was in your resources. And this is not something I did. This is from another university. But this is, you can evaluate, let's say you're using a lesson from cyber.org and you want to see if its content is equitable. Well, this has a section to go through and evaluate different the culture, the identity, whether it does exceptionalities. And this is a chart, then you can score it and look at whether it does this. Okay, so those are just some activities I have provided for you. Now, in this part of the module D, you will then, after you finish this video, you will review the differentiation, review the resources. You're going to select the lesson plan to adapt. You can also use the one of your own or the provided one. I provided a lesson plan, but you can go on, use any lesson plan that you have or maybe another lesson plan you have. And there are some resources out there. I didn't put this in here, but I do want you to know that Teach AI or Edu AI are very great tools. I think I have them in the resources too, because they have tools that will take a lesson plan and convert it in UDL. They have a UDL button there for you. So that's something to do too. Adapt for UDL differentiation, so you're going to take that lesson plan and modify your lesson plan and focus on providing multiple means of representation, multiple means of expression, multiple means of engagement, and provide a link to adjust the lesson plan. Okay. And then you're going to look at the culture responsive teaching, and you're going to take that and provide, and all this is in your the act. You get the module packet for Part D that you will submit. Okay. So explore the provided resources. So the activity log that you downloaded in the beginning, you will use for each section. Adapt the culture responsive, further adapt your lesson plan to be more culture responsive. And then you're going to do some reflection questions. And that's all in the document, each that you downloaded in the beginning of this module D that you will fill out. And all that is filled out. This one does not have a component where you're going to submit a comment and then reply to someone else's comment in the community, in the course and in the activity, but you will see that in some of the other activities. So this is what you have to do on your asynchronous part and the rest of this. So if you have any questions, please reach out. And thank you.